Hello and welcome to Old Faithful. I'm your host and the only person on camera, Matt Trask. My thanks to Perfect Wave Productions, the incomparable Scott Gooch behind the camera and behind the mixing console. My thanks to Kelsey Ray at Black Hills Blend Espresso for the Americano today. They are still open at the time of this filming because they are a drive-through location. If you need to get caffeinated, swing on in. 4 convenient locations. They have closed the Menards location and moved. So one location has moved, if that makes any sense. Look it up online. Who else do we need to thank? We'll thank them later. This is something that I was absolutely not going to do for this show. Here, I intended for Old Faithful proper to be me interviewing other people about their guitars, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and here we are. I hope you enjoy these, and I fervently look forward to the day when I can have guests back on the show and talk to them about their guitar. This is extremely hard, and I want to offer my apologies to the few guests who have expressed nervousness about being on the show, and I just stopped short of making fun of them for it. And I said, there's nothing to be nervous about. I'm actually nervous on my own damn show. What do you think of that? So the thing is, we need to figure out something to talk about with just me. And I thought today, I talked about this guitar on last week's episode, which was filmed at Haggerty's Music Works. And we might talk about it a little more. But I thought today we'd talk about at least 5 of you have asked me, how did I come up with the concept for this show? So I thought we'd talk about that today. There is online a large, very zealous, very argumentative guitar community, just like there's a gun community and a Ford community and a Dodge community and a quilting community. There are all sorts of videos. The debate rages on, PRS versus Gibson, this and that and the other thing. There's lots of wonderful videos out there that fall into several categories. There's gear demos, which, although the demonstrators try mightily, are only so much good for the viewer at home. Most of us watch these videos on our phones, and so you really can't get an idea what a particular piece of gear is going to sound like in the room with you from a gear demo. If I could offer a critique to the various gear demos, I would love for you, for example, when you're demoing an effect pedal, to show us the floor. That is the minimum amount of whatever effect that pedal can do. But you guys are doing great. There are a whole bunch of guys who do lessons. They're all great. And you can find somebody that you can learn from. I'm not that good of a guitarist, so I didn't think I needed to add my noise to the din of online guitar instructions. There are a group of people who just like to offer their thoughts on various current scenarios in the guitar industry, which never made a lot of sense to me because it's going to be online in perpetuity, and nobody's going to care about that little kerfuffle between Dean and PRS from 2015 or whatever. So how did I get the idea for this show? I had several inspirations, one being the great Mark Agnesi. He worked at Norman's Rare Guitars, and he started a show called Guitar of the Day. He has since moved on. He is, if I recall, the VP, the Vice President of Product Experience for Gibson Guitars. But he started a show, probably several people started the show, but he was the star of the show from Norman's Rare Guitars, a guitar store in California that specializes in rare guitars, where he would showcase a guitar of the day. And it was usually a vintage guitar, and he played through a hand-wired deluxe reverb. I'm a huge deluxe fan. And he played generally as closely as he could rhythm parts from various recordings that we would all know. So And he tried really hard, and I appreciated this, to play the rhythm part. So it gave you an idea of what that rhythm part sounded like, and he wasn't showing off his ability, he was showing off the tones of the guitar. That show has been taken over by a man named Michael Lemo, who works at Norman's Rare Guitars, and he's still doing Guitar of the Day. It's 5 days a week, as I understand it, Tuesday through Saturday on YouTube, and actually that was part of the reason I chose Monday night for my videos to come out, just in case I ever got that big. I didn't want to compete with Norman's Rare Guitars' Guitar of the Day. Mark Agnesi has since started something called Gibson TV, and maybe it's on a thing called Twitch. I'm a spooky caveman cowboy. I'm trying to keep up with this technology, but look for that. There's probably a lot of good content. Right before he went to the Gibson Guitar Company, he started a show called The Mark Agnesi Show, where he was interviewing guitarists about their guitars, kind of like this show. Some other inspirations for this show, in their own way, two monster guitar players, B.B. King and Willie Nelson. B.B. King, I got to see once perform live, and I love his playing. I loved the man's speaking and the way he thought, the way he communicated through speech, through talking. There are several old instructional videos from the late 80s or early 90s, and I'll watch them over and over. I never get tired of them. He, of course, played a Gibson ES345, if I'm not mistaken, called Lucille. Now, Lucille was not just one guitar. It was a model of guitar, and he may have had 30 or 40 of them himself, but he was known to play that one guitar. And also, he favored solid-state amplifiers. We've talked some about the difference between tube and solid-state amplifiers on the show. He was an early adopter of solid-state amplifier technology. And the one and only, the great Willie Nelson, who in the must have been the early 70s, broke his whatever he was playing at the time. If I'm not mistaken, again, it broke after a show somewhere, and so the story goes, he was looking for a guitar that would give him, as close as he could, the sound of gypsy jazz giant Django Reinhardt. And he chose a Martin N20, I believe is the model number, which became the most unlikely, iconic country guitar in the world. No one would choose a Martin classical guitar to build a country career on except Willie Nelson. And unlike B.B. King, Willie Nelson doesn't have a stable of Martin N20s. Trigger is one guitar. And as near as I can tell, Willie Nelson hopes that he and Trigger die at about the same time, because he can't perform without Trigger, and Trigger can't perform without him. And so I wanted to showcase things. These instruments become a part of us in ways. I wanted to showcase that. I wanted it to be more than quite obviously, I love guitars. I'm obsessed with guitars. I mentioned on last week's show, I think, I cannot remember not wanting to play guitar. I will always wish I was a better guitar player. I will never, ever, ever be as good as I want to be on guitar. But we develop a bond with these guitars for varying reasons. It can be a lot of reasons, and I really want all of the reasons, from the Excalibur guitar that fell into the hands of the performers serendipitously, to the guy who wanted to play guitar and found one in the corner and decided, well, I'll just learn to play this one. But I wanted it to be about more than guitars, and I hope that's coming through. I wanted it to be about stories, and I wanted it also to be where maybe you don't play guitar, but it would make us guitarists, and I keep saying guitarists, there have been a bassist, there's been a violin player, and I hope to have more instruments. And on the next installment, we're going to talk about that actually. But I wanted it so you could relate. You could think, well, that's the way I feel about my Peterbilt, or that's the way I feel about this Fendi purse that I have, or this coffee mug, so that you could understand that, yes, this is an old friend, and you could relate to that feeling. And I hope that we're doing that on this show. I've been truly blown away and humbled and gratified by the guitars and the stories that I've already had on this show. It has truly exceeded my expectations in every way. And on St. Joseph Street here in Rapid City, there is a neon cowboy on the roof of the stock growers building. And he's on a horse, and he's kind of standing up in the saddle like he's watching the herd from a bluff or something. And I'm a single guy, and I live alone, and most of the time I'm alone. So I do a lot of talking to myself. I am that guy. I am super weird. So if I'm driving by, it's a sign and then with a neon outline. Maybe we'll get a picture of it up. If I'm driving by at night, a lot of times if I'm driving by St. Joseph Street, I'll say, hey, good night, cowboy. And one day I was driving along, and I said good night to the cowboy, and then I said good luck watching over the neon range. And I thought, hey. And so I told my brain, boy, first, here's what I've learned to do. The first thing I do when I come up with something like that is I get on YouTube and I see if that's a thing. And turns out that wasn't a thing. And so a couple days later, my brain wrote a song called Neon Range, loosely biographical, but like I say, my brain wrote it. I will never take credit for these songs. You will never hear a song I wrote. They're terrible. I've tried some of them, and I've tried to forget all of them. So here we go. I sold my cows at auction last September. I took my horse and ran him through the sale. He brought enough that I threw him the saddle. I drove home and packed my things and hit the trail. And now I'm riding the neon range. There ain't no cow, and life is strange. I'm telling you, it's quite a change. Now that I'm riding the neon range. I hope my horse ain't too mad that I sold him. It looked like he went to a cowboy crew. I got a job, I work for Skull Construction, and I do my best like Dad taught me to do. While I'm riding the neon range, there ain't no cow, and life is strange. I'm telling you, it's quite a change. Now that I'm riding the neon range. Sometimes you'll catch me staring past the city when the mornings get so cool in the middle fall. But I will admit in the chill of February that I don't miss the cowboy life at all. While I'm riding the neon range, there ain't no cow, and life is strange. I'm telling you, it's quite a change. Now that I'm riding the neon range. Thank you very much.